You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Check, check, check. Check, 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 check. Hey, I see lights. Are we good? Are we good? Are we good? Can you all hear me? Benjamin says that I need to fire my sound guy. The problem is I'm the sound guy. I don't know what's been going on lately with these live shows, but let's take it from the top. What's up, and welcome into this live post-game reaction episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. Credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets, whether you win or lose your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I don't have this show, I guess, scripted out the way that I normally do. I felt this was more of a kind of a group therapy session here. As I said in the cold open that you guys couldn't hear, the Buccaneers eliminated themselves from the playoffs, losing to the Commanders 23-20. And I see a lot of you upset in the live chat, and I fully understand. Buccaneer Bruce in the chat was saying that Baker Mayfield sucked tonight and he wants him gone. I will vehemently disagree with that take. Baker Mayfield is the whole reason that the Bucs made the playoffs to begin with. There have been plenty of times this season that Baker's come up huge. Baker, I texted it out to the insiders at halftime. I said, if the Bucs go on to win this game, the biggest moment was that run by Baker Mayfield in their final possession of the first half. That sparked the offense. They were able to march down and end up getting a touchdown. What this game boiled down to were two mistakes. Two. You can say all you want that you don't win or lose a game based on one play. You don't win or lose a game based on one call. But there were two key mistakes in this game that you can point to and say, that's where it changed. The first one was the fumble on the exchange between Baker and Jalen McMillan. Now, Baker took the blame for it because Baker always takes the blame for it. That's how he is. I don't know where the miscommunication was. I don't know where the disconnect was, but that fumble led to a Terry McLaurin touchdown and gave the Commanders a lead. That right there was a huge play. The other big mistake was that when the Bucs got the ball back, right after that fumble, right after Terry McLaurin got a touchdown, Baker immediately rifles it down the field to Jalen McMillan for a huge gain to get into Washington territory. That was big. You had Bucky Irving running really, really well. He made a little bit of a mistake. He had a run on 1st and 10 where it looked like he could have gotten the first down. Instead, he tries to cut it back in, gets tackled. It ends up being 2nd and 1. That's where things fell apart. The 2nd and 1 call was a bad one. It got blown up right from the jump. But then on 3rd down, Graham Barton snaps the ball early. And instead of converting and getting a first down there, the Bucs are forced to kick a field goal with just under 5 minutes to play, and they never saw the ball again. I think that was a bigger mistake than the fumble. Because if Barton snaps the ball when he's supposed to, and those linemen get a jump, you mean to tell me with the way the Bucs were running the ball in this game against one of the league's worst run defenses that they weren't going to get a yard? That changed the game right there. So Barton talked about it in the locker room after the game. He said he has to be better. He had gotten his calls out, and then he snapped it on the wrong cadence, and it was completely on him. That was the worst moment for a rookie mistake. It really, truly was. And I see a lot of you still in the chat talking about how Baker is not a good quarterback. I think that's asinine. The guy had 4,500 yards and over 40 touchdown passes. Yeah, he made mistakes. You take the good with the bad with Baker Mayfield. But at the end of the day, the biggest mistake, the biggest turning point was a botched snap by your rookie center. The Bucs had plenty of opportunities in this game. They really did. I'm not going to blame officiating. I'm not even going to blame the defense. I've seen some of you pointing out, that the defense was terrible. They didn't force a punt. No, they didn't. But at the same time, they got 4th down stops against the NFL's best 4th down conversion team. Antoine Winfield Jr. had a fumble in his hands that the refs decided wasn't going to be reviewed because they blew it dead due to forward progress, but that ball was coming out before the whistle was blown. That's a terrible rule by the NFL that cost the Bucs the ball. That was a huge play. The defense did pretty much what I expected them to do. And holding the Commanders to 23 points, I think is fine when you have an offense that has been averaging, well north of that. But here's where the big difference was. The Washington Commanders ran 69 plays. The Bucs, who averaged 64 offensive plays a game, had 44. The time of possession, Washington had the ball for over 35 minutes. The Bucs had it for just over 24. It was a collection of shooting themselves in the foot, of unforced errors and penalties, and it just wasn't their game. They could have won it, they should have won it, but if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, it'd be Christmas every day, and that's just how things shook out. Somebody who was that? Dirk Disco said, how many 4th down stops? Washington went 3 of 5 on 4th down. That's 60%. Their average on the season was 87. So based on averages, they should have gone 4 of 5 or even 5 of 5. They are the best 4th down offense in the NFL this season. So you lose Jamel Dean, which hurt. I've said my piece on Jamel Dean. I don't think he's going to be with the team next year, but he was playing well. He prevented a touchdown against Terry McLaurin earlier in the game. You lose Zion McCollum for a large stretch. Now, all of a sudden, against Terry McLaurin, who had an all-pro caliber season, against Zacchaeus, against De'Ami Brown, who came out of nowhere, you're relying on Josh Hayes and Tyreek Funderburk. There was no answer at inside linebacker next to Levante David all season long. The pass rush was getting into the backfield, but Jaden Daniels wasn't going to go down. He never went down. He eluded tacklers, he bought time, and he did what Jaden Daniels has done all year long. And Buccaneer Bruce, you're saying, yeah, you're right. These players played excellent. I never said they played excellent. I never once said that they played excellent, but they played good enough to win. They just kept shooting themselves in the foot over and over and over. And you can't have that in a playoff game. The difference is the little things. And that's what the Bucs got wrong in this game. The little things. A handoff exchange, a snap count, false starts, holding penalties. The Bucs were penalized 7 times for 65 yards. Washington was penalized 5 times for 39. Again, the little things. Time of possession, total plays, penalties, third down efficiency. Washington was 8 of 15. That's pretty good. That's pretty good by the Bucs defense. But then they would go for it on fourth down. The Bucs were 5 of 9. You can pretty much cancel those out. We're going to continue to talk about this game more coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where Prize Picks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the game, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns, and for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, and whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or want to cash out quickly, Prize Picks has you covered. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL, all lowercase, all one word, to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play $5. Prize Picks, run your game. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every single day. And guys, I'm going to say this right from the jump. I know everybody is bummed. Everybody is upset. People are frustrated with the game. Be respectful in the chat. If you're not respectful in the chat, I'm going to boot you. You guys don't need to be sitting there arguing with each other. We don't need trolls in there being obnoxious. Either be respectful or you're gone. Because nobody's happy about this. Nobody is happy about the way this game went. The last thing I would have expected was for the Bucs to score 20 points. But, that doesn't mean Baker Mayfield is a crap quarterback. Again, 15 of 18 for 185 and 2. Those aren't bad numbers. But the Bucs only ran 44 offensive plays. Bucky carried the ball almost as many times as Baker threw it. And to me, it still wasn't enough for either of them. So, look, the way this game ended, it sucked. The Bucs allowed Jaden Daniels to go over 300 total yards. He had 268 passing. He had over 30 rushing. The Bucs gave up 350 total yards. But they got the stops when they needed to. They got fourth down stops. They held them to field goals. At the end, it just wasn't enough. And there were a lot of good things that we were going to be able to talk about from this game. Baker absolutely bowling over Bobby Wagner on that drive at the end of the first half. Mike Evans just abusing Marshawn Lattimore. That was one of the most fun things to watch. Marshawn Lattimore was getting so angry because Evans beat him rep after rep after rep. 7 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown, all against Marshawn Lattimore. But again, it was the little things. The pass rush getting into the backfield. But the secondary being such a shell of what they were supposed to be this season, weren't able to get crucial stops in those moments. The amount of times that Yaya Diaby and Kalijah Kancey were held to no call. Again, I'm not blaming the officiating. The Bucs got away with some too. Levante, he got away with a pass interference there on Zach Ertz on a fourth down stop. Levante David was incredible in this game. He was flying all over the field. It sucks that he got hurt at the very end. I hope it's nothing serious. I haven't seen an update, but I haven't looked for one either. But at the end of the day, this is a team that got a lot more out of the pieces that they had than they probably should have. And I say that knowing that before the season even started, I don't know how many times Evan and I talked about it. Before the season even started, we said this is a team that's built to make a true Super Bowl run in 2025. You lose a top 3 receiver in the NFL for the entire season in the same game where you lose your number 1 wide receiver and he's out for a month. You lose an all-pro safety for multiple weeks. You lose your inside linebackers on numerous occasions. Inside linebackers that weren't even playing all that great to begin with. You lose your other starting safety. You lose the starting safety that you signed to come back to the team. You lose your corners throughout the season. You are out there with undrafted rookies starting because you have no one left. What kind of difference could Christian Izien have made in this game? What kind of difference could Jordan Whitehead have made in this game? What kind of difference could Chris Godwin have made in this game? Those are questions we're never really going to get answers to until next season. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say it until I'm blue in the face. Baker Mayfield is the right quarterback for this football team. He has proven that time and time again. Back-to-back career years for Baker. And yes, he made mistakes. Yes, he threw interceptions. Yes, he fumbled the ball. Didn't lose all of them, but he did fumble the ball. But this is a team that is now going to pick 20th in the NFL draft. And I saw somebody, you guys are blowing up the chat. I'm not going to scroll all the way up to see who asked it, but somebody in the chat said, what's more important this offseason, edge rusher or corner? The answer is both. And if I have to choose one that's more important, it's corner. The Bucs need to get rid of Jamel Dean. They need to get out of that contract. They need to save themselves some money, and they need a shutdown guy opposite of Zion McCollum. And I've said it on this show before. I've texted it to the insiders. That guy, to me, in the draft at number 20 is Benjamin Morrison. Benjamin Morrison would have been a top 10 pick if he didn't have hip surgery back in October and is missing most of the season, is missing playing in a national championship in a week. Benjamin Morrison is one of the best corners in college football. And because of that injury, because of that surgery, he's going to fall. And I am telling you right now, he is going to be the best rookie corner of this draft class. And if the Bucs are able to nab him at 20, that's huge. They're not going to get Abdullah Carter from Penn State. That dude is probably going to be a top 3 pick. Otherwise, that's the edge rusher I'd have gone after. But Yaya Diaby has been solid. He didn't get the sack numbers we were hoping for, but he was one of the best in the NFL at pressures. What the Bucs need is somebody opposite of him that's going to garner enough attention that it's going to make life on Yaya a little bit easier. They tried to do it late in the season with Shaq. It was too little, too late. Shaq had a nice play in this game. He had a big stop. But corner, edge rusher, inside linebacker, that's where the focus needs to be. You have your offensive line. Bring Ben Bredesen back. He was perfectly fine. Keep those 5 together. But this draft, it needs to be defense heavy. You re-sign Godwin. You re-sign Levante David if he wants to keep playing. You re-sign Ben Bredesen. And then you draft a corner. You draft an edge rusher or 2. You draft a linebacker or 2. There's going to be guys in free agency that we'll talk about in, the shows, the weeks to come. But this is a team with a really, really solid core. And a lot of that core is really young. So this is a team that's going to make noise for some years to come. I think it's vital that they bring Chris Godwin back. David Stacks in the chat says Scott Reynolds of Pewter Report said he'll put his reputation on the line that Chris Godwin will be back next year. I hope he's right. And that's a bold thing to say. But if he's saying that, that means he knows something. Scott Reynolds is very good at what he does, and he is very dialed in. If he is going to say that, that means he knows something. Maybe that it's Godwin feels that he needs to come back, that he wants to come back. I am going to talk about where the Bucs go from here, because I've seen a lot of you in the chat talking about whether or not Todd Bowles should be fired. I'm going to address that next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. And they have tons of ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players are going to score a touchdown and how many points each team is going to score. But you can do player props for yards, receptions, touchdowns, total yards. More than that, you can place bets on team points for a game, a half, or even a quarter. No idea what the Bucs Super Bowl odds for next year are going to be, but I'll keep an eye out for that. Meanwhile, the Lions are still the favorites to win the Super Bowl at plus 320. Visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Wrapping things up here on a post-game live reaction episode of Locked On Bucs. Florida man says Gruden cursed us for life. No, they've won a Super Bowl since Gruden. That's irrelevant. But let's talk about this for a minute, because a lot of people in the chat, a lot of people on Twitter are screaming from the rooftops for Todd Bowles to be fired. And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think he will be. I truly don't believe that the Glazers and Jason Light are going to fire Todd Bowles. They would have reasons to. It would be justified if it happens. Some of those reasons are how far the defense fell off this year. And they can also say, you know what? The defense was not up to par. It was not up to snuff. But again, look at all the injuries that he dealt with. You know, there's only so much that he can do with the pieces that he has. The depth only goes so far. The other thing that they can point to is, and Christopher, I see you in the chat. I'm going to get to that in a moment because I've heard other people say that, and I will, again, vehemently disagree. But there have been plenty of times this season where Todd Bowles' decision-making and especially his clock management has been absolutely brutal. Just unforgivably brutal. And we saw it again on display against the Commanders. Now, fortunately, the first time we saw it against the Commanders, it didn't blow up in their face. But to let 10 seconds run off the clock before you call a timeout at the end of a half, if the Bucs don't get a touchdown there, we're talking about how that decision was a big reason that they didn't win the game. But then at the end of this one, you had 2 more timeouts in your pocket, and you let the Commanders run the clock all the way down to 54 seconds and run a play before you call your second timeout. And I understand in the grand scheme of things, they didn't get the stop, so it didn't matter. But I also understand maybe wanting to keep that timeout in your pocket to use to try to tie or win the game. I get that. But in that moment, in that situation, you need to leave as much time on the clock as possible. Now, you needed your defense to get a stop on 3rd and 1. It didn't happen. But there are plenty of other examples throughout the regular season where clock management and decision-making have not been Todd Bowles' strong suit. You can go back to not going for 2 on a couple of occasions. Against the Kansas City Chiefs, is the one that pops in my head the most. You tie the Chiefs in their house, or you go down 1 because you score a touchdown in the Chiefs' house at the end of regulation, and you kick the extra point to play for overtime. That doesn't cut it. All that said, I don't think they fire. I don't think they fire Todd Bowles. Now, whether or not Bowles wants to walk away is a completely different conversation. But I don't see a firing coming from a head coach that has now won the division 3 years in a row. And I get, how important is that? How important is it to just win the division and not be able to get any further? They fired Dungy for the same thing. So we'll let it play out. I wouldn't expect a firing if I were a Bucs fan right now. The other thing that I want to mention real quick before I get to the comment that I alluded to was Greg Allman had posted a list of the unrestricted free agents for the Bucs. So Chris Godwin and Levante David obviously are the headliners there. Hopefully they bring both of them back. But then you have Ben Bredeson. I think he needs to be back. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Anthony Nelson, Greg Gaines, Robert Hainsey, KJ Britt, Will Golston, Kyle Trask, Shaq Barrett, Tavier Thomas, Bryce Hall, Justin School, Royce Newman, Sua Opeta, Sterling Shepard, Mike Edwards, Troy Hill, Chase Edmonds, and Ryan Neal. You probably really only need to keep about 5 of those. Chris Godwin, Levante David, Ben Bredeson, Anthony Nelson, Greg Gaines. Those are the guys you need to keep, in my opinion. You can let Tryon Shoyinka walk. You can let Hainsey walk, even though he's a great depth piece. They'll probably try to bring him back. You can let KJ Britt walk. You can let, I know we all love Will Golston, but you can let him walk. You can let Trask walk. Shaq, who knows what he's going to do. None of those guys are vital to what the Bucs need to do, except for Godwin and Levante, potentially Ben Bredesen, unless they feel they can upgrade the position. So the unrestricted free agents are not going to hamper what the Bucs need to do outside of the big two. And speaking of Chris Godwin, and Chris, you had mentioned it in the chat. You said to let Godwin go. And here it was. Godwin's too fragile. Here's why I vehemently disagree with this. I've had a couple of other people say it to me as well. Godwin is not fragile. The last thing that Godwin is fragile. What you have here is a receiver that has suffered 2 catastrophic injuries that were unfortunate circumstances. He gets his ACL blown out thanks to a low hit against the New Orleans Saints. Then he gets his ankle dislocated thanks to an illegal hip drop tackle against the Ravens. That's not a guy being fragile. That's a guy being an unfortunate victim of circumstance. Jamel Dean is fragile. Carlton Davis is fragile. Those are guys that going into the season are going to miss 4 games. Carlton Davis missed plenty of games for Detroit this year. That's fragility. Godwin isn't that dude. He's suffered unfortunate injuries. That does not make him injury prone. Christian McCaffrey is injury prone. If you want to change sports, you could talk about how, I had a name at the top of my head. All right, being a Red Sox fan, even though I don't watch baseball anymore, Jackie Bradley Jr. was an outfielder for the Red Sox that was constantly getting hurt. Jacoby Ellsbury, there's a great example. You guys remember Jacoby Ellsbury. He went from the Red Sox to the Yankees, always on IR. Every single year, you can set your watch to it. Ellsbury's going on IR. Those are fragile guys. That's not Chris Godwin. He's one of the toughest dudes out there. He's just been unlucky. Anthony Davis. Thank you, Demon Hunter. Beautiful. Anthony Davis is injury prone. So, guys, I'm way over on time. I realize I got a late start because my microphone wasn't working. This sucks. There's no other way to put it. This loss sucks. Because the Buccaneers, and I will die on this hill, were the better team. They are the better team. And I'm excited for Jaden Daniels, and I think it's really cool what he's been able to do this season. I think the Washington Commanders being a viable team in the NFL is good for the NFL. I think it's hilarious to watch Cowboys and Giants fans lose their minds over it. I'm excited for David. And I know you guys are excited about David too. He gets to go cover another playoff game. He's got to go back to Detroit where he and I were in the divisional round last year. But it just sucks that the Bucs season ended this way. To go on such a great run, to get to where they were, and have it come down to 2 crucial mistakes, it's going to sting for a little while. With that, I'm going to bid you all a fair adieu. We have plenty of off-season talk coming up. So please check out everything going on over on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at Yarcho _Bucs. Subscribe on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as your favorite podcast platform. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. And thank you all for staying up late with me in the live chat. I know things got a little rowdy early on. I appreciate you guys bringing it down a couple of notches. We will continue to have our therapy sessions together all off season long. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.